Hi, welcome to Silent Generation. I'm Joseph,
I'm Nathan.
and this week's topic is infrastructure aesthetics. We talk a lot about cities on this pod, of course, and architecture, and we're always advocating for like a kind of bottom-up building of stuff. But at the end of the day, there's always going to be parts of a city that have to be from above. They have to be from government, whether it's like local or federal. But it's infrastructure. It's the kind of nuts and bolts of what makes a city work. But even within that large category, there's a lot of leeway in how it can look and present itself to the populace. I think it says a lot about how a city sees itself from the citizenry, from like the elected officials, and from the architects and engineers involved.
Yeah. I think it's a good episode for us for two reasons. One being that most urbanists don't think about aesthetics. They have other priorities they place before them, like solvency, density, things like that.
Yeah.
We're some of the few that like will actually know how to talk about this.
Yeah, aesthetics and like visual appeal. It's been so often used as like a cudgel by NIMBYs that like YIMBYs are afraid to even touch it. It feels like it's something you can't win, so just ignore it. Basically, like in order to get ourselves out of the housing crisis, we got to build, and we can't really like ask for anything prettier.
Yeah, because there are so many NIMBY meetings where they're going to announce a new project, and the NIMBYs will say that it doesn't match the local character. And that is used as a cudgel, like you said. So most urbanists would prefer if like they can't even use that as a tool, that we don't have to consider the local architecture if we're going to build something new.
Yeah. It's a shame. It just feels like, I mean, it's a harder path to try and like kind of fight them on that level. I kind of understand the impulse. M. Nolan Gray would be a guy who says like, who cares what stuff looks like? Build, build, build. And we're just not that guy.
Yeah. I really have to put myself back in time in order to put myself in the shoes of the people that care about aesthetics in that way, or that they don't like how new architecture looks. Because like say 5 years ago, I was one of those people where I thought 5/1s were ugly, and I was a bit of an aesthete urbanist, but then I transitioned, and now when I see new buildings, I don't really understand as much like why people don't like them.
Yeah. I don't know. I follow like a development blog, Chicago, EMB. And I like when a new building is released or the renderings are released, like I like the comments that don't just say like, bah, everything's ugly. But it's like, I like when people don't just veto, they actually propose new ideas. Someone's like, wow, that whole facade, they're not going to step it back at all. They're not going to do like maybe a different material, like maybe a different material at the base and something at the top. Like, because this publication is read by like architects and construction people. So like, that's the kind of stuff I want to see. Like the 5/1s are going to get built. But there is some leeway in how pretty you can make them.
Yeah, constructive criticism.
Exactly.
And then the second reason why I think this is sort of interesting to talk about is that most people don't tend to think about the aesthetics of infrastructure because they don't think about infrastructure in general or notice it. There's this interesting quote I found this week from Lisa Parks in this article around the antenna tree. Most people notice infrastructures only when they are put in the wrong place or break down. This means that public knowledge of them is largely limited to their misplacement or malfunction.
Yeah.
And I feel like, most of the time people will only say notice fire hydrants if like they're spewing water out of them or like a utility pole if it's knocked down.
Yeah. It's just, but I mean, it makes intuitive sense. Like it should kind of be filtered out of your vision if everything's going well. Like you should have other things to worry about than just being like, oh, that telephone pole is upright. It's like, yeah, it should always be like that.
Yeah. I feel like artists are some of the only people that really notice infrastructure. Like if, say, I'm walking around the city with a friend who also went to art school, they'll stop and take pictures of sewer grates or like a fence that's almost falling down. They'll skip over all of the usual like photography subjects like flowers and the sunset and go straight to the things that people usually kind of think are ugly.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see artists having more of a predilection towards that. I don't know. It could be a generational thing too. I don't think I don't think boomers appreciate this stuff. Is my theory of it.
Yeah, they tend to like things that are purposefully beautiful.
Yeah, they don't like. It's so interesting because like I guess found art, like found objects, and Marcel Duchamp is a lot older than boomers and stuff.
Yeah, and with that question, we can start out by sort of thinking about, does infrastructure need to be beautiful? One place I want to start, which a little bit controversial, but it's a Cultural Tutor post. I'm not on Twitter now. I don't know if he's gotten even more controversial, but He had this post a few years ago called The Danger of Minimalist Design, which features 2 pictures of bollards to start out and then many other examples of older infrastructure in conjunction or juxtaposition to newer minimalist infrastructure. And it's interesting to start with that because when I was back on Twitter, back when I was more of an aesthete urbanist, I once made a very big faux pas where there was a local Chicago urbanist who posted a picture of a bollard next to the 606. It was brand new, and they were like, oh, look at this new bollard. And I didn't really understand why they were posting it. I thought it was because it looked minimal and ugly, and I was like, oh, that's ugly. And then I got like half a dozen comments where people said I was ugly.
Oh my God. The internet sucks. You gotta not. If I've learned anything, do not read the comments. There's nothing waits for you in there that is good.
Yeah.
Man, that's so mean of them. It's not even just like that's just your opinion, man. They're going straight for the jugular and calling you ugly.
I mean, our friend Julia once pointed this out to me, where it's like most urbanists, urbanism is their one thing. That is the thing that makes them an interesting person, and they're very defensive about it. Whereas for me, I'm, multifaceted. And it's just one part of me.
I always thought about that with like going to Hebrew school as a kid. Like I have all those people, like I'm still friends with them on Facebook and stuff. And it felt like that was just one little part of my life. And then they all live in Israel now. like for all of them, they're like, it's like everything they post seems to be about being Jewish. And I was like, that was just Wednesday night. I had to go to Hebrew school. Like I do the biking thing. I do the podcast, the construction, like all that stuff. But yeah. Some people just kind of hone in on one sphere.
Yeah, that's like me with my one Facebook post about being gay, just being the coming out one, and then that was it.
Just end of gay experience.
Yeah.
Wow.
But back to bollards, they're interesting to think about with infrastructure and beauty, because why would a piece of infrastructure that's meant to, get hit by cars, to prevent pedestrians from getting hit by cars, why would that need to be pretty,
Yeah. I think that, what the cultural tutor talks about is when he says the dangers of it, he's talking about that, like the kind of clarity that kind of roundabout or counterintuitively comes from a very detailed object. Like minimalism, like teaches us that like things are clearer, more beautiful, and more true as you strip ornament away from them. But with certain things, like, I don't know, that they show like as the beautiful bollard, they show like a black kind of like Doric column type bollard, and it does just speak of just like, this is something solid, this is something a car can't mess with.
It has like details, like both the base and towards the top. How do you say it? It kind of looks, it's like a form that would be made with a lathe, but obviously it's metal.
You know, just rotated saying. Like it's radially symmetric.
Yeah, it's pretty in that way. The newer one, it's very simple. It's literally just a cylinder. One of the comments I saw in the post, someone said like, it's so simple because it's the type of bollard that's supposed to retract into the ground.
Yeah.
They called the cultural tutor dumb.
Oh, yeah. No, that is true. But not all those do retract into the ground. Like in Chicago, that's what most of our bollards look like in new construction. But we don't have those fancy European ones that go up and down. We have the worst of both worlds. We have the uglier bollard that doesn't do the cool European thing.
Yeah.
And also, like, you just need the top to be flat. If you can make the top flat. You can make the rest whatever shape you want, whatever like interesting, cool shape, as long as it still sinks into the ground.
Yeah. And then the next piece of infrastructure to think about with this question is a piece of infrastructure that's known for being beautiful and iconic. So British telephone booths.
Yeah, it's like up there with the double-decker bus in terms of iconic little parts of like the British, but particularly like London environment. And so these came to my mind, and they actually were mentioned in the cultural tutor post.
Yeah.
But I had seen like a list of telephone boxes, and in my mind, it went in a very straight line, where it went from very ornate and detailed and like the perfect one that we all have in our head, the like Queen's England red mailbox. And then by the end of it, it was just like this clapped together, like plexiglass and plastic, like half exposed phone box. But that's not really the way it was.
Yeah, we both read this article for this week that was about the history of British telephone booths, and it went through models from K1 to K8. And yeah, it was not like a linear progression from them being very ornate and detailed and high quality to them being cheap and made of plastic, because the initial one, it was made of plywood. And then there were iterations in between that were also kind of lower quality, made out of concrete.
Yeah, it's interesting because like I mean, it tracks that, concrete and reinforced concrete was, a commonly used material at this time, but it is like more newfangled compared to like either wood or cast iron and stuff. So it's interesting that like the first ones, or not the first ones, these K2 ones were made with the concrete, and they're pretty ugly.
Or
They're
K3 was the concrete one.
oh,
K2 was cast iron. It was also red. It was kind of similar to what became the most iconic telephone booth, the K6.
mhm.
K3 was the concrete one, and that one was smaller in size. So K6 was kind of a fusion between K2 and K3, in that it was cast iron and red, but then it was also of a similar size to the smaller concrete one.
Yeah. Yeah, they're so like so interesting. I don't know how they have photos of these. You'd think they'd all just get replaced, but I guess like in smaller towns, like no one ever bothered to replace some of them. And also, I think there's just a strong British tradition of like retired men who like are fascinated by these little bits of like esoterica and preserve and take care of them. I'm sure there's a group of like 5 guys who meet up and take care of old telephone boxes together.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a museum in Britain where you can go to look at several of these, but some of the models, like the K5, there are no surviving examples. They have a replica in the museum, though.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and then so in my, flawed memory of it, there was just like an ugly boxy one. And that is the K7 one. So this is from 1962. It's the more like minimalist, mid-century, clean lines one. But apparently it weathered super easily, and so it didn't really last that long.
I love when the public's vindicated, where their gut reaction that something that's new and ugly and looks cheap actually is in the long run.
Yeah.
It vindicates them for liking, things that intuitively seem higher quality, like the ones from the 1930s that were cast iron.
Yeah. No. I mean, like the public like can be wrong about stuff. Like, I don't know. I think of like ornate plastic things sold at like Home Depot, like an ornate plastic mailbox that like if you just got a metal one that was a little simpler, it'd probably last longer. But again, the public is right about a lot. A lot of things that look flimsy are.
Yeah. One thing that I was kind of surprised with is I had a bit of a Mandela effect moment, but not really, because I've never seen Doctor Who. But in Doctor Who, he doesn't actually use one of the red telephone booths. It's like a police one that's blue.
Yeah. No, it's a blue like police box, which I think we used to have those in Chicago. Not a box, but we had some kind of like police call station that would be scattered around the city. And you'd like, if you saw a crime happening, you'd call into the box.
We still kind of have those with universities. They
Oh,
have
yeah,
those little
yeah.
stations.
The blue like poles over there. Yeah, my school's covered in those. It's supposed to make you feel safe, but it just kind of reminds you of the dangers out there.
Yeah. I wonder how often they even get used, though.
No. I just know that my school had like if you're feeling unsafe, we can come pick you up and drive you home. And then people just like abused that and used it as like basically like a free but slow Uber.
Yeah.
But yeah. Oh yeah. And then on the telephone boxes. So yeah, they went super minimal mid-century, but then they kind of swung back a little bit with the K8. I think it's a perfect mix of like old and new. It's still the bright red, but it's got some like rounded shapes to it. It's kind of like a fun 70s one.
It looks kind of Wes Anderson to me.
Yeah.
Like if you wanted to put one in a movie that would match his aesthetic.
Yeah, exactly. No, I could totally see that for like, if the Royal Tenenbaums took place in London instead of New York.
Yeah. Because it's a bit of a softer red. It feels more pastel.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. But yeah, in summary, like it's not always this straight march from a more detailed to a more minimal. Like things kind of swung back and forth, and like public perception, like I've always tried to understand this of like how much does the average person want of modernity and how much do they want of tradition? And I don't know, it changes a bit every decade. Yeah.
I mean, I think they also just appreciate things that are signaling tradition, even if it isn't traditional. Like with the K6, that was the first telephone booth to have royal crest, like a crown on the outside of the box. And that was in the 30s. Like it wasn't the ones decades prior that had them.
Yeah.
But it felt more traditional.
Yeah.
So how does infrastructure achieve beauty? I think there are 4 ways it really does this. The first one just being through engineering and design. This is essentially just the form where engineers, civil engineers, at the end of the day, they have to make something that's functional, and sometimes that results in something that's beautiful, as is the case with bridges.
Yeah, I think that like suspension bridges emerging in America, like, the Brooklyn Bridge, all the works of the Roebling. I forget what the older there was the great, like, John Roebling, I believe, was the engineer, and then he died during the construction of the Brooklyn Bridge, so his son was put in charge of it, and then he got injured and never recovered, and so then the wife was put in charge of it, so they're just, like, running out of Roeblings, essentially. But yeah, suspension bridges, like, they have such an honesty to them. Like, it's so immediately apparent of how it works. Like, oh, it's all strung from the big tower. I think it kind of prepared people for that, the honesty of structure that would later reemerge in mid-century architecture. I think it basically primed people for seeing stuff like the exoskeleton of the John Hancock building being on the outside. Like, that would have been pretty crazy if people didn't have a kind of like intuitive understanding of engineering that comes from seeing this stuff.
Yeah, because you studied engineering.
Yes, I have. I don't remember much of it. No, I think I was better at the dynamics classes than the statics. Like, statics is like those things kind of diverge, and in civil engineering you study a lot more statics, and then I did mechanical, so you do more dynamic and stuff like that. But yeah, my heart goes out to the civil engineers. I'm sorry for saying you guys had the easier major. We always said that at IIT, but I think they work hard.
Yeah. So bridges, they fit into this category that I learned about this week that I think is really interesting. So in the book, How Infrastructure Works by Deb Chakra, she describes how conservation biologists sometimes refer to animals like pandas, elephants, and polar bears as charismatic megafauna. Large, easily recognizable, and beloved, they make excellent spoke creatures for wildlife and for their homes. All over the world, charismatic megastructures are the public faces of our collective infrastructure systems. So examples of these are bridges, dams, train stations, large terminals, nuclear power plants, and large communication towers. These are part of systems, but they feel like monumental structures that stand above them or outside of them in a way.
Yeah, and I would bet that those megastructures are always able to secure more renovation and repair funding than stuff that's harder to look at and visualize. Like the Hoover Dam in Las Vegas appears to me very well taken care of. I don't believe it's crumbling away or anything. Like, you know, like, I mean, it's a tourist destination in its own right. How many pieces of infrastructure are like that, you know? But then I think about very hard to visualize pieces like the Illinois Deep Tunnel Project, which is basically a big tunnel that holds stormwater. I don't know the funding system of that. I know it's taken a while to build, but like that feels so much harder to sell to the public of just like, listen, we can't show you a photo of this or anything, but there's a large tunnel out there and it needs to be filled with stormwater or else your house is going to flood.
Yeah, that project, it's cost billions and they've used tunnel boring machines, which sounds like, oh, what if? But a project that costs billions and takes a tunnel boring machine, that's like any subway line. So it's amazing that we've like secured this funding and like hardly any Chicagoans know about it.
Yeah, no. I think it's because it's hard to visualize. But no, it's super important.
And then the opposite of charismatic megastructures. So I want to bring up another term. This is just street furniture. So charismatic megastructures, they have unique designs. They're not necessarily really mass produced. They're kind of like one-offs that take large teams. But then street furniture, they are mass produced. And these include things like bollards, post boxes, phone boxes, street lamps, traffic signs, things like that.
So I would say that like the British telephone box is a charismatic street furniture, microstructure, something like that. It's still charismatic, but it's everywhere. It's like, quotidian, but still charming.
I just think in general, though, there's less of a budget for street furniture as opposed to charismatic megastructures.
Yeah.
Like the other ways of beautifying them that we're going to get to in a moment, like painting and public art, primarily charismatic megastructures have the budget for those additional beautification things.
I definitely see that. On the other side is what I would call uncharismatic megastructures. Because we were talking about the beauty of bridges and stuff, so I tried to find, like, is there a uniquely ugly bridge? And the best I could find is the Dock Bridge in Newark, New Jersey. It is ugly, but I think it kind of comes back around again, like an ugly dog that's like so ugly it's cute again. Like it's just so like relentless and kind of horrifying to look at because it's just so densely, not detailed, but like its structures all seem so small. It doesn't have that kind of clarity of design of the great charismatic bridges like the Golden Gate and the Brooklyn. It just looks like it's from like a post-apocalypse, basically.
You know what that reminds me of? Are you familiar with the Battersea Power Station in London?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Super imposing. It feels like something from Batman.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's also kind of uncharismatic, but also iconic.
Yeah. I think it's like, you can't be bland. You got to be either, redefining beauty or just like so hard to look at that it at least draws attention to it. But it carries 720 trains a day. It's like a real workhorse. It ain't pretty, but it's getting the work done.
Yeah. Is that for the Northeast Corridor or freight
Yeah.
rail? Okay.
Yeah, so it's like actually passenger rails, I believe, I want to say.
Cool.
Um,
So one of the ways that you can beautify infrastructure is with paint. So paint actually helps insulate metal structures from oxidation. There are better like ways to insulate them, like say powder coating, also galvanizing, which we'll talk about in a moment. But paint is one of the basically the only opportunities that civil engineers and engineers have to make infrastructure pretty. Oftentimes they just will paint it a color to make it blend in, like the street lamps in my neighborhood, the older ones are green, and I feel like that's to blend in. But
definitely.
sometimes like say with Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, that's this really beautiful orange color. It's called International Orange.
It's a very red orange.
Yeah.
Like it's really pushing the definition of like my concept of what orange is.
Yeah. It's sort of in between, but a lot of really elegant or complex colors oftentimes are in between, and you have to question what it truly is.
No, it's a beautiful color. What it also brings to mind for me, because I guess I've been on this Metal Gear Solid kick, is like in Metal Gear Solid 5, like your base of operations is this like oil rig out in the ocean, and it is in that international orange, and it does just read as very like urgent and nautical, and like, I don't know, to me that color means that like, hey, big industrial stuff is getting done. Like this is a serious piece of infrastructure.
Yeah. One of the reasons it reads as nautical is because international orange, it's used by the maritime as well as the aerospace industry, is to make objects distinguishable.
Yeah.
It's easy to see bright orange in water.
Yeah, but it feels so different from like the construction orange that I see all the time. Like it's kind of less arresting on the eyes actually. Like it's not really that fluorescent. It's so like, I don't know, solid. It's also the color of astronaut spacesuits, the like second layer on the inside.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And also the CNA building downtown in Chicago.
Oh wait, that's actually international orange?
I didn't look that up, but you said, that the color is somewhat
the
reminiscent.
CNA building, if it was not painted red, it gets called Big Red. I think is a great name for a building. But yeah, it'd be a pretty like boring part of the skyline. It's just another like boxy impersonation of Mies van der Rohe 70s office building. But someone just decided to paint it red, and now it's like, oh, it's the red one in the skyline.
I would tell people that it was my favorite skyscraper as a kid because I, as a child, liked bright colors. And that was the only bright skyscraper on the skyline.
That's fair. I have some memory of people calling it Clifford as well, but maybe I've made that up.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But yeah, Golden Gate Bridge, it has the best of both worlds with it, both having an iconic design, but then also this beautiful paint color.
Yeah, no.
But paint, it's not actually that ideal at the end of the day because of galvanization. Is this something you learned about in engineering school?
Not really, actually. I think maybe briefly. I'm trying to think back to my like material science class, MS-201, but no.
This is something I learned about in Rust, The Longest War, which was a book on Rust. Sounds really boring, but it was very interesting. But there was this chapter called Where the Streets Are Paved with Zinc that talked about the process of galvanization, how they like hot coat steel and other metals with a layer of zinc that then protects it from oxidation. And it costs more initially, but it's so much better in the long run. Like they have this example in the book where there's like a bridge where basically the left-hand side is painted and the right-hand side is galvanized. And like they've had to repaint that bridge twice over like 50 years, whereas the galvanized side, they haven't had to do any work. And they've saved like hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in repairs.
That does sound like America infrastructure building, though. We always do the like more immediately cheaper option.
Yeah.
Just to kind of squeeze it past a city budget, I think usually. And then we're a big can kicking culture,
Yeah, we have a culture of deferred maintenance.
Yeah.
Europe's a lot better with galvanization. Their rates are higher. I don't really want to do the work to figure out. Like,
the galvanization rates. It's the average per capita.
STEM stuff is so boring to read.
Yeah, my heart goes out to the data scientists and analysis people out there, because if they just do their job right, we can just read the summaries of it.
Yeah. So dry.
When I think of galvanization, I think of not its like amazing usefulness in exterior stuff, but the problems it creates when it's on the inside of things. So in plumbing, people wanted to pivot away from lead pipes for supply piping. And so the idea became using galvanized piping because, hey, it's corrosion resistant. I'm not exactly sure how this happens, but basically, like a layer builds up of corrosion on it though, so I don't know how that's corrosion resistant. Like, all right, the pipes themselves are not corroding, like, so it passes that part of the test, but over time your plumbing supply piping gets choked off by increasing layers of corrosion caused by water constantly running through them. So I think it's basically the traits that make galvanization good for kind of exterior facing things start to work against it when it's on the inside of a pipe. And so this becomes a big problem in like high rises built before the 1970s or like in the early 1970s in Chicago, because there's no way to fix this besides opening up every single part of the building and replacing the piping. It happened in my uncle's building. It cost him $30,000 per unit. Like,
Does it have to be where like they do all units at once, or can they do it one at a time?
They go in stacks.
Okay.
Yeah. So they go floor by floor and they go through it and they like identify where your risers are, which is where the supply piping comes through. You can leave the drains in place is one thing. It's not really hurting anyone. If your drains get a little bit narrower, and they don't get narrow at the rate of supply stuff. So for new construction of high-rise stuff in Chicago, very basic stuff. You just have to use copper for your supply piping. It works. It's extremely expensive. It's extremely labor intensive, but it's what we know. And it feels like we have this kind of cultural force of like, that can't be the case. We're a forward-thinking, futuristic place. We can't just be using copper that we've had for millennia. You know, there must be some other amazing material out there, whether it's galvanized or in lighter regulated places in the Sun Belt, there's PEX or like flexible plastic piping. And I feel like that sates the need for like, perfect. This is cheaper. It requires less skill. This is the march of technology. This is what we need to be using. And it likely leaches microplastics into the water.
One newer substitute I once heard about in a presentation was there are people trying to develop pipes made out of pollen.
Oh.
I guess it can be mass produced and it doesn't really corrode. So it would be great for water pipes.
No, I am interested in that. Yeah. PVC is used mostly for drains because of that kind of plastic leaching kind of thing. With drains, you can put whatever in them. Who cares? But for supply stuff, it's like we have to be careful. Yeah, I understand that like there has to be better solutions, but then construction just doesn't seem to follow that rule. Like, yeah, we get every so often new technology comes around and improves profitability by a little bit, but it doesn't follow other industries in that way.
Yeah. So another way that infrastructure can be made to look beautiful is through adding public art to it. This is something that came to mind because Maddie Hilly on our nuclear energy discourse episode, she mentioned how she was supportive of initiatives where they're adding murals to the outside of cooling towers at nuclear power plants.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't find too many examples of this besides one that's at the Cruis nuclear power station in France. They added this mural to the outside that was called Aquarius, and it's of this like boy playing with light and water.
Yeah. No, it's kind of pretty actually. I like it. I thought they'd put stuff on the other towers there, but I guess I only have so much money.
Yeah. I mean, it looks small in pictures, but those things are huge.
Oh yeah, no, they're gigantic.
They're taller than skyscrapers sometimes, I think.
Another low-cost way to improve the optics of nuclear is doing what Maddie did, which was taking a video of herself walking around a nuclear power plant while being very pregnant and showing that it's safe. That costs very little money.
For listeners who've never listened to that episode, that was one of our best guest ones.
Oh, yeah.
And I give it a listen. Like, it just changed a lot of hearts and minds, apparently.
Yeah. And I know it's not the most clickable one. Like, if you're just trying to decompress after work, maybe you don't want to hear about nuclear power, but we promise it's fun.
Yeah. And then another example of public art being added to a charismatic megastructure, it's the Zizkov Tower in Prague. I visited this recently when I was in Prague.
Mm-hmm.
It has a bit of a Y2K feel to it, at least in the observation deck. But the outside of the tower in the year 2000, they added these baby sculptures that were created by the Czech artist David Cerny. And they don't have faces. They have like this like gash.
Yeah. So, yeah, I was like racing to add this to the doc of it. You beat me to it. It's Death Stranding. It's like weird oil babies, basically, because they're black. They're like pitch black, and they're like climbing up the side of it. And some of them are like going up and some are going down, I believe. But yeah, I just think that I don't know enough to really flesh this out. But I think there's such a strangely strong Czech tradition of like body horror and stuff.
Yeah.
Marlo in the Discord posted that like Whimsycraft hotel, I think was in Czechia, but yeah, they just got some weird stuff going on over there.
When I think of Czech body horror, I think of that one Czech animation about the hand. Have you ever seen that?
No.
You're not an art kid, so you probably don't. But I don't remember the name or who made it. But it's this like very creepy animation of a hand.
Oh man.
Check it out if you're curious. But these baby sculptures, though, they were popular enough that like this installation was supposed to be temporary, but it became permanent. So this tower, which there was some public pushback I read into initially, because it started construction when there was still the communist government, and they finished it after the fall of the regime in the 90s. But yeah, people like public art on their utility towers.
Yeah, I think it was seen as kind of like a folly at first. Like, listen, we're in a hectic time. We need to be building like our little like Tower to Babel, Tower of Babel kind of thing. But it's like, it's charismatic at the end of the day. It is, kind of strange and futuristic looking. There's a luxury hotel room in there. And I was like, there's no way they added that in the construction of it, like during the kind of like Soviet turnover. Was it Velvet Revolution? Was that Czech?
Yeah, the Velvet Revolution.
Yeah.
Yeah, that luxury hotel room got added later.
Yeah, it was 2012, and I was like, that kind of sounds like the right year. That sounds like, I don't know, like just around the kind of like birth of social media, where you would want to show like, look, I found the tallest hotel room of all of Prague.
Yeah. Have you ever been to any like big telecommunication towers like the CN Tower in Toronto or Seattle or anything?
No, and I also haven't even been to the Stratosphere in Las Vegas either, and that's like it's kind of aping those a bit, but it doesn't actually. Maybe they did stick an antenna on it or something, but it's not that it has to be tall for function, and then we might as well make it pretty. It's like, we want to have a very tall tower, and we might as well stick some communications on top.
I don't even know what that looks like, because there's so many random things in Las Vegas's skyline. That doesn't ring a bell.
It's just, it's more similar to the Space Needle, I would say, than to CN Tower. Yeah. There's one in Berlin. There's a kind of ugly TV tower. I think it's from the 80s or so. But yeah, it feels like a very European city thing to have. Big, ugly tower.
Yeah, because they don't like skyscrapers. So, with Prague, that tower, the Zizka Tower, it's the tallest structure in the entire city. So I bet that's a recurring thing throughout Europe. Like the Eiffel Tower is used for telecommunications too, I think.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they don't just have a Sears Tower they can stick antennas on. Yeah, I didn't think of that.
And then the final thing that people can do to beautify infrastructure is to disguise it as nature. This is something I've particularly seen in California, where they'll make utility towers, like usually for telecommunications, like cell phone towers, they'll make them resemble trees, like palm trees usually. Lisa Parks wrote about it in Around the Antenna Tree, a text I read for this week. And that practice began in the 90s in response to the demands of NIMBY groups.
Yeah, it feels... I mean, it must have come out of California, right?
Yeah.
It did. It makes sense. Like, I don't know. We were talking about YIMBYs earlier, and that really grew out of California, because all the issues we're facing now kind of first happened in California, because they have like, just much more of each of the pressures that cause a housing crisis. But one of those pressures that we do not have is the idea of beauty being a natural resource that has to be kind of like divvied up and can't be covered by other development. Like people are protective of views in California in a way that just not a concern here in Illinois. But yeah, it makes sense that they would be like the first to force a company to make an antenna look like a tree and not really pull it off.
Yeah, they would tell the like telecommunications companies that they would reduce like property values, and they get them to spend a lot of money on these. They're called stealth towers. Making it look like disguised as a tree, it can cost as much as $200,000, which is a crazy amount.
That's the differential to make it tree?
I mean, that's the most expensive option.
Man, and it's still going to look bad. Like when I was out and visiting grandparents, and I was driving my grandpa, and he's not doing so hot, kind of like memory-wise and stuff, but seeing one of those towers like kind of jolted him awake, and he's like, who do they think they're fooling with that? And I'm like, wow, these really can't get past anyone. Like, these are like really terrible.
They're sometimes disguised as things other than trees too, like flagpoles, church steeples, mosque minarets, crosses, and grain silos, according to the piece by Lisa Parks. But I think it's sad that we as a society have decided that we can't devote extra money or resources or time to making infrastructure beautiful and ornamented, but then we will like drop $200,000 to make it look like a fake tree. Yeah. Like if we just shift our money and resources in a different way, like we can make the world more beautiful in a way that's less ridiculous.
Yeah, where the goal is so much like closer within reach.
Yeah.
You know, like I wish I could run some kind of government organization in Chicago where I would go around to construction projects and I would swap out stuff to make it look prettier. Everyone would hate me, of course. But yeah, you could do so much more with $200,000 spread across like different construction projects. You give them like, oh, you couldn't afford a nicer brick for this. Here's a nicer brick. That's a lot of money. I think one piece about these like disguising this infrastructure as nature is that it's very important to the people that live there to do this because it needs to keep the illusion alive that they live in nature and are roughing it in some way because like, you know, they're not putting up these poles for funsies. Like this is to provide you with better cell service. And this kind of gets into the suburban paradox of wanting city level amenities, but not a city feel. And so you want the sewer systems, you want the telecommunications, you want the power distribution, but you don't want the antennas and you don't want the transformer step down stations and like all the unsightly parts of it. Yeah. I just don't jive with that.
You want there to be highways that you access with your car, but you want them to be far away and you want your neighborhood to be inaccessible to them.
Exactly. But yeah, and so that's why I see like, yeah, people will pay $200,000 out of their city's coffers in order to keep the illusion going.
Yeah. I don't know if it's the city paying for them or the telecommunications companies. I didn't read into that. But yeah.
It gets passed along is what I would expect. But yeah, and then this is one topic. I think that the kind of active beautification of city infrastructure can be kind of cringe sometimes.
Yeah.
I hate to just like blanket call stuff cringe. I'm thinking about that like New Yorker article about how like, why is everything cringe now? Why is everyone afraid of sincerity? And I'm not afraid of sincerity. I guess what I'm trying to express is that there's bits of when a city really actively tries to beautify that it comes off in a weird paternalistic, hello, fellow kids, isn't this city beautiful? Kind of thing that just rubs me the wrong way.
I think that really occurs when designers try to make infrastructure look like it's public art. That's the real problem.
Yeah, because I think even a lot of public art isn't good. Like even like I love the that's what they're shooting for with this. You know, they want to make benches so pretty they're like public art. But I'm like, most public art is plop art, as they call it, like as a pun on pop art. But it's art that's just plopped down there and is usually like kind of abstract. Nothing against abstract art. I just don't think public structure is often the best use of it. Every so often there's a hit, you know, like the Picasso in Chicago. That one's like, oh, that's great.
Yeah. You know what that makes me think of? It's like that bike trail up to Skokie where it's like all sculptures and they're all kind of random and feel dated.
Yeah. There's like a Gandhi one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's just like there's a random statue of Gandhi walking in there. It kind of reminds you talked about like Marianne Williamson, that she just brings up all these kind of like dated references like Mother Teresa and Gandhi and stuff. That's kind of the Skokie Trail vibe. It's just like, yeah, here's a totem pole. Here's Gandhi. Aren't these all good things?
There's this one where it's 3 letters ABC and the C has cheese.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that, I don't know, maybe that comes back around. It's so cringe, it's charming actually at the end of it. But what kind of reminded me of this is over on Roosevelt is this art piece called Places and Traces. And here's like the write-up on it. Seen from across the street, single words inscribed atop the form reference ephemeral human thoughts: exist, imagine, feel. Along the sidewalk, random pavers are inscribed with words that reference indirect human actions: discover, reason, observe, prosper, while the crosswalks are inscribed with words that reference direct human actions: walk, listen, merge, swim, that people act out within the district. This is freakish. This is like alien behavior, the way they're talking about humans in this way. Like, it's so, I would like stop by the Trader Joe's over there and I'm like, merge? What is it talking about?
Like, as people are walking around that neighborhood, they need to see the word swim.
Yeah, it's like, I forgot I could do that. Like, now I can swim. But it's just like, it's either designed by committee or it's just like, it's so bizarre that you can't even be offended by it. You know?
I think the origin of public projects like that, it's architects who are trying to get too close to art. Like it's Icarus flying too close to the sun.
Yeah.
You are an architect or designer.
Yeah.
You cannot make, like, seriously, just design a cool looking bench. You don't need to write all these words on it.
Yeah. They're like, it's like, listen, you can do something artists can't do. You can make a habitable home, you know, like just be happy with yourself there. Don't start to vary into like, expressive art in this way.
Yeah. When I think about like infrastructure that's made to look like public art and very cringe, I think about these benches that are in Lawrence Avenue. There's this article I'll link about them. They are bright blue. They're kind of too small. I mean, for me
Hmm.
as a 6 foot guy, and also for people who are even like 5 feet, I feel like they look too small, but
Yeah.
they don't even face like towards the street. And they're just like side by side or opposite of each other in this really awkward
Hmm.
way. And so this article, it's like ridiculous blue seats face buildings, don't attract shoppers, critics say.
Yeah, I really read through all of this, and it's like it almost seems like it was a prank. Like, I don't know, not to be all Riv Turn Twitter guy, but like the knowledge we've lost, like just the basics of kind of how people interact with a city. Like for one thing, yeah, the people just always kind of want to have their back to something if they're sitting in public, even if that it's not directly like, park benches on a winding path through a trail. Like the bench is not ever facing the path. Like you're going to hear stuff without seeing it. No human likes that. But again, it's kind of this like alienating, like literally it feels like an alien designing this kind of stuff.
Yeah. And what's crazy is that redesign of Lawrence Avenue when they put in these blue seats, that was like at least 10 years ago and they haven't fixed it.
Yeah. And then people are complaining that, we'll talk about this in a second, but like hostile architecture is meant to deter like homeless people hanging out. They did such a bad job with these seats that it kind of encouraged homeless people to hang out on them because they're so like weirdly spaced and uncomfortable that like housed people would not choose to go and hang out there. They would rather sit like closer to their own home or like a nice park bench or something like that. But for homeless people, they're like, oh, that's better than a curb. And then the fact that I think they're single seats too, so they're like a little bit antisocial in that way. So like if two people who know each other well want to hang out, they'll sit on a park bench together. But like homeless guys who just want to hang out to drink a little bit and play some music are okay with two separate seats. Like it's yeah, this like reverse psychology kind of thing.
Yeah. Or it's like when straight guys will take the train together and won't sit side by side so they don't look gay.
So it's not gay, yes. Uh-huh. Yes. 2 feet apart, so it's not gay. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's a quote from it too where someone described how they didn't like the benches because they are more of public art rather than utilitarian because of the bright colors and the odd shapes. So like, yeah, it's just like, don't try to make it literal art.
Yeah. No, it looks worse and is less functional. Like that's like it's a rough job.
And then how do you feel about murals?
I think they can be done well. Like I think the older the mural, like, the more I respect it. Like I think in a bit I'll talk about like the Paseo Boricua here in Chicago, but that has a long history of murals back to like the 70s. But sometimes they're just like overexposed. I feel like the artist Hebrew Brantley has too much stuff in Chicago. I see his work too much. Get someone else new in there.
Yeah, I've seen his murals both in like Ravenswood and the Cermak Green Line Station.
Mm-hmm.
And his thing is like he likes illustrating people who have like aviator goggles.
Headgear. They have like goggles. Sometimes they'll have a hat and stuff. I think he's just bad at eyes, maybe. I feel I should not be this mean.
No, it's okay. I'm not a big fan of his work either. I feel like public murals, they're oftentimes either kind of chuggy, like way too honest, sincere, or they're a little bit critical in this like Banksy way that fails right away.
Yeah, because it's like I do think that like, I don't know. I think public art should appease the public a little bit. There's this, I think the standard take now is that no, it should challenge and confront people aggressively. Like that is where public art is. And I'm like, I think it should kind of like assuage their egos a bit. But in terms of chuggy, I think about that. I haven't used that word in a while. It's damn useful. The Robin Williams mural between Wicker and Logan over there, just overlooking an abandoned Walgreens. What is Robin Williams' connection to Chicago? What is his connection to this abandoned Walgreens like parking lot? Like, I don't know. It's just so like it could be anywhere. That's when I don't like stuff, when there's no like, regional specificity to it.
Yeah, but we should describe it for our listeners because it's very cringe. It's like you see his forehead, I think.
Yeah, it's his. Yeah, it's like from nose above, and it's him kind of like doing a face, like an eyebrow thing, and then it's surrounded. The background is a whole bunch of what's his name?
Genie from Aladdin.
Genie from Aladdin. Yeah, but then they don't have his eyes on it. I think that would be a copyright thing, basically. So it's kind of interesting how they have taken the form of Genie and turned it into this like copy pasted, like a fractalized Genie.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just
yeah. And one reason I'm a little bit mural averse is because painting brick is really bad for it. It makes it hard for the brick to breathe. It needs to, if it gets wet, it needs to be able to release the moisture. But if there's a layer of paint, it then gets trapped and it can cause the brick to corrode.
Yeah. No. So it's like, just increasing the future cost of it. And so if it's going to do that, it might as well look beautiful. It might as well look good. But
one thing with infrastructure that is starting to get painted more that I'm not as adverse to is like painted bike lanes and bus lanes. And this is interesting to think about because, infrastructure as a whole, it hasn't really changed much in my lifetime. It looks relatively the same. But I think street design is one of the only areas where urban planners and designers are really changing things. Yeah. And it's one of the only instances where the world's getting more colorful.
Yeah. Like we're getting a lot of like pedestrian bump outs in Chicago. And those are often done. Sometimes they'll add planters to them. I like that. Or they'll do like a stamped concrete that looks kind of like brick on the cheap. Yeah. And I like that. That adds like an extra kind of color and intent to it of like, this is just a curb. Like, please don't crash into this.
Yeah.
But yeah. And then we have our bright green bike lanes, which I like because, it's just whatever brings visibility to cyclists and feels permanent. Like, hey, we're here and we're going to continue to be here. But the paint gets a little slippery in the winter is one thing. I prefer the kind of Amsterdam, they mix the dye into the concrete and they pour it. But that is so worlds away from where we are in America in terms of building.
Yeah. The painted bike lanes, like it does corrode relatively quickly.
Oh yeah.
It becomes less vibrant and then at some point you can't even see it.
Yeah, it does feel good when they're fresh. Like I've been on some new ones, but yeah, then they just kind of gross. They like show dirt like more. Yeah. It's kind of, it's rough. I learned that Madison, Wisconsin uses bright red for their bike lane. So I wonder like, okay, we have green. Does everyone else have green? Some people go blue because Copenhagen did that. But yeah, Madison, Wisconsin does red because that's their school color. I think that's nice. It's kind of like the nuclear power thing. Like people are inherently afraid of this. How can you make them less afraid of it? Paint something on the side of it. And then for teaching Wisconsinites to love bicycles, you have to be like, no, like, don't be afraid. Actually, it's red, just like Bucky the Badger. Don't you like Bucky the Badger?
Yeah. That's the reason why the purple line is purple. It's because Northwestern's color is purple.
Yeah. No, makes sense.
Yeah. But why, are urban planners making streets look so visually different than they did a few decades ago? It's because like traffic engineers, they're coming to the conclusion, they're finally realizing that streets that are made to be easier to drive in are actually less safe. The faster a driver can go, the more crashes happen. So they're creating what are called like traffic calming effects when they redesign roads. Yeah. And so those bump outs, those bike lanes, they make it harder for drivers, which then slows them down. It makes things a lot safer.
Yeah. I've heard people complain about like, I think it was the Augusta bike lane made the whole thing narrower and they changed the speed limit to like 25. And I just remember someone telling me like, yeah, I get so nervous when I drive down there, like I'm going to clip my car or something. And I didn't want to be rude, but I'd be like, oh, just get better at operating your car. You're given enough width. Like you can figure it out,
Well, something I learned in Killed by a Traffic Engineer is that traffic engineers decades ago, they had this belief that basically there was a correlation between the number of minor accidents and the number of major accidents. Yeah. When in reality, the roads where major accidents and minor accidents happen are polar opposites. It's usually one or the other. Yeah. So if you have a road where minor accidents are happening, major ones are basically sometimes impossible to happen, but in America, it's never impossible.
I do need to read that book for my like kind of Cliff Notes understanding of it. There's tons of different situations where it's like, here's the assumption we base this on. It turns out not only was it inaccurate, it was entirely the opposite from reality. Because the other thing was like, before traffic calming was really figured out, the idea was visibility. We need to increase drivers' visibility. We need to cut down trees like that are blocking visibility and all of that. And when people have more visibility, they drive faster.
Yeah. Or they would paint them white. Like there are still some older trees in the city that are like that, where they painted the base white so that cars could see them more easily.
Oh, these aren't just elms? These aren't just white trees?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, the aesthetics of modern streets with all of these street calming things, they fit into something I've conceptualized as what I'm referring to as the aesthetics of control. This really comes out of safetyism, but post-pandemic, I've seen institutions really limit the number of choices people can make about their own mobility. Both, say if they enter a museum, like there's less like entrances open, there's more stanchions.
Wait, yeah.
But then with roads too, it's like they are trying to control our motions in this way that they didn't before. There's less freedom, which I think is good for like safety, but I don't like it visually.
Yeah, because broadly, you kind of like, the turn of the century photos where everyone's kind of sharing the street in a kind of, everyone's sussing out their decisions and their movement in a kind of like person to person way.
Yeah.
They're not relying on like these hard demarcations.
Because there's so much more infrastructure today on our streets than there were 100 years ago. Yeah. Like, for example, with traffic signs, like there are so many now compared to how many there used to be.
Yeah, traffic signs, I think how that dovetails into the aesthetics of control, it's interesting. It's kind of offloading the responsibility and control. It's the state saying like, hey, if we put a sign there, then we're assuming every driver is a perfectly reasonable and attentive person. So whatever we write on the sign, we're good. We're free. Like we don't owe the driver anything. We don't need to calm the street. We just need to put like, a piece of infrastructure that says like curve ahead or slow down. And if they don't read that, then it's on them. So it just feels like it's the cheapest way to kind of wipe your hands of the issue.
Yeah. Traffic engineers, they do want the onus to be on drivers as opposed to them. Killed by a traffic engineer. Throughout the book, they refer to the 3 E's of traffic safety, which are education, and enforcement, and engineering. And education is the one that like is the most convenient for officials. Basically it's just saying like you need to know road safety, and if you get into a crash, it's because you were being irresponsible.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, it's like the 3 E's of covering your ass, basically. Yeah, in terms of like the firm demarcation of things, I think it's all just, to take my usual tack, like it's cars, like bicycles and pedestrians, if given enough space, can successfully navigate around each other. Sometimes in Lincoln Park, I'll ride on the mixed use path, which is joggers and cyclists, and it's like 15 feet wide or something of crushed gravel. And I never ever have an issue on that. Like, so people can, at a low enough speed with enough visibility, everyone can kind of suss out each other's intentions. But when there's someone in a box going 30 miles an hour, like everyone has to change what they're doing.
There's this amazing photo I once saw shared by Strong Towns on social media, which it was taken later than you'd kind of expect. I think maybe the 50s, maybe the 40s. But in the photo, there's like a train on the street, like an interurban. There's someone on a horse, someone on a bike, someone walking. There are no cars, and all of these modes of transit are able to interact freely. It's really only once the car is in the street that you then need all this like visual clutter in order to slow it down.
Yeah. That's they always say bike infrastructure is not bike infrastructure, it's car infrastructure. I see a part like of all of this, like from like signs to just traffic demarcation. I see them a part of kind of a cultural structure that has to support driving. We have to move a lot of parts of our culture around to accept that hundreds of thousands must die of car crashes in order for us to keep this thing going. Yeah. And so I think the other part of it is we have to change our language, in America, and how we talk about car crashes. I only realized recently that like in my immediate family and like just outside my immediate family, it's probably 4 or 5 like life-changing car accidents that have like really changed like everyone. And the way we talk about them is just so like as if a bolt of lightning came out of the air and killed them. Like,
yeah, it's more painful though than a bolt of lightning. It's a really horrific death.
Yeah.
And the odds as an American are 1 in 93. It's really high.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like everyone knows someone. I don't know, just spending time talking with family, I feel like I'm always uncovering some new horrifying traffic story. And I guess like in the past, I'd be like, that was the 70s. No one had airbags, yada, yada, or all that. But like these stories don't really go away. Like,
yeah. Airbags, I think, save 6,000 people a year. And the cost for each person saved is like 800,000,
wow.
Based off of like
the value of human life, which they have to figure out, like actuarial sciences exist for a reason.
Yeah. No, I know so many facts from reading Killed by a Traffic Engineer, like that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great book. I recommend it to people who are interested in urbanism.
Are you done with it?
Yeah, I finished it a little while ago, like over a year ago.
Can I borrow it?
You can borrow it, sure.
Check it out from your library.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I mentioned this earlier, but hostile architecture. When we like first came up with the idea for this episode, I was kind of saying that like I feel like this eats up a lot of the space in the discussion about the aesthetics of infrastructure. It's just the kind of like, hey, that bench has an arm in the middle of it, so homeless people don't sleep there. But it's true.
Yeah.
This is like kind of how cities are being built now. And I think that it is part of a language. I mean,
Yeah.
it's conveying to the end user, this is how you should behave.
I feel like it takes up a lot of space in conversations because it's hard to unsee once you see it. Like when
Yeah.
I see a bench now, I always think, how would I be able to sleep on this? Or how would a homeless person be able to sleep on this? But
Mm-hmm.
also, like a lot of things with infrastructure that seem like they might be aesthetic or design decisions that are very random, like there
Mm-hmm.
being a random boulder somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Someone might think that's an aesthetic choice when really it's out of hostile infrastructure. They're trying to make it difficult for homeless people or skateboarders to interact with.
Yeah. I think that there's like a second layer to hostile architecture, which is so hard to notice. Like it's hard to, like, yeah, it's easy to see a bench that's been, modified or maybe designed from the get to be anti-homeless. But just the lack of picnic tables in parks here in Chicago is crazy to me. But like the second you get to the suburbs, there's these nice, like all-in-one cast, like circular concrete picnic tables. You can actually see, like, eat your meal there.
Well, you know why we don't have them? It's because there are so many shootings at birthday parties and barbecues in Chicago.
Oh my
But
God.
I have seen some, like on the northwest side in Peterson Park. There are some benches there.
Yeah, it feels like this like sliding scale. Like the further out you get to the suburbs, then you'll be allowed to get more and more park furniture.
Yeah, I wonder why.
um, But then it's kind of the opposite because right in the center of town, there are picnic tables in the very touristy Grant Park. So it makes me feel like the city of Chicago trusts tourists more than Chicagoans. It sees like tourists as these like upstanding citizens who have to be protected from the native populace, basically. It just pisses me off.
Yeah. It would be nice to have like park benches that people could have picnics in.
Yeah. I'm always like biking around and stuff, and I just want to eat my meals outside usually so I can keep an eye on my bike instead of locking it up. But yeah, I often actually end up I go to Grant Park sometimes during the workday to eat the picnic tables there as opposed to a bench.
And then one type of like hostile architecture I learned about this week that I've seen before, but I didn't know what its purpose was. They're called skate stops.
Yeah, so these are little like, that's actually kind of like the Kleenex version of the name. Like Skate Stop is actually a company, but they're anti-skating deterrents. And they're basically like metal clips that are posted onto like concrete benches, or they can be knobs that are like welded onto metal rails to discourage people from skating.
Yeah, I saw them yesterday because I was along the river walk. I went to sit on a bench with someone and I asked them what they thought the little metal things were, and they were like, oh, I would assume that's structural, like it's how it was installed or something. But yeah, along the river walk there are like these ramps going down and up, and it would be great to skateboard down them, I'm sure. Like you could grind and it would be fun. But yeah, they had to install those so people don't do that.
Yeah, I understand that they must really piss off skaters, and I'm sure like people try and take them off and stuff like that, but like I still see skateboarders around, like they figure it out. I think I noticed them in Kluzinski like Plaza over there. But I think that like if I asked a skater like, do you want to see every skate stop removed? I think they'd probably, if they were honest with themselves, they'd be like, no, man, like we probably can't skate everywhere. Like it'd be pretty crazy if just during like a very packed, boardwalk, like river walk day, if there was someone just grinding down the rails, like as little grandmas are walking around. Like, yeah, man, we can't use. Like, I guess my dream skate stop would be that like they retract at some hour, and then people can skate during one time, and then other people can use it during another.
Yeah.
Because I've had people's skateboards like shoot out towards me as I'm just walking in the city, and they're usually very apologetic. If they're apologetic, then I'm okay. But, yeah. No, we've talked about doing a skating episode, but we need to get a guest for it, of course, because neither you or I
have one in mind. I showed them to you.
Oh,
but yeah, that might happen one day.
Yeah, no. I swear I'm not that big of a square. I think there's interesting stuff about skating. I'm just sensitive that I can't kickflip.
Yeah. No, I can share this idea. Maybe our audience will get hyped about it. I've had this idea to do a trilogy where it would be basically on how teenagers use the urban environment. So urbexing, skateboarding, and then either graffiti, or there's another option. But yeah, I think basically illegal activity in urban environments.
Yeah.
I think it would be interesting to explore.
I have some light urbex experience. So yeah,
I think everyone does. It's so easy.
Yeah, it's true. Not the one I did. The one I did was pretty hard. I'll say that for the episode though.
Yeah.
So I find that, on the more positive side, away from hostile infrastructure, I think that people have a lot of civic pride sometimes for like the unglamorous parts of their infrastructure in a way that surprises me. Like, of course, people are proud of the Golden Gate Bridge, the
Yes.
Doi. But I find that like Chicagoans, when talking about New York, will suddenly become armchair urbanists, even if they have no other inclination towards it otherwise. And they'll just be like, well, they have no alleys over there, so they just pile up their trash in the streets. It's really an uncivilized way to live. Here in Chicago, we do things properly. But I love to see that. It's so great. It's like they're understanding how the city works and they're appreciating it more deeply.
Yeah. I think people appreciate grit in the places they live much more than in the places they travel.
Yeah. No, I think we want cleanliness when we land somewhere else. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, another little piece that people find charming is in Berlin, they're crossing signals. The little green man has a hat. And so he's on keychains everywhere, and he's become this like symbol of the city. And it's just like a quirky kind of like old world design decision that stuck around, probably due to lack of money than versus anything else. But yeah.
Yeah. It makes me think of Garion from Babylon Berlin with this hat.
Yeah, he's got a very big hat. He's a very small guy. He's always walking somewhere kind of furtively.
Yeah.
No.
It reminds me of it. But Berlin, it has like some older sort of legacy infrastructure things. Like, have you ever read about Berlin Keys?
No.
Okay, this is like a very visual and critical studies thing, but it's something I learned about in my like intro to visual and critical studies class. But they have these keys where basically, if I get this wrong, German listeners, please be kind. But the way that you unlock them, it's like you put them through the hole and then you pull them out the other side, and you have to insert them and twist them in these like really
That is medieval.
specific ways.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like you kind of can't know it intuitively. You almost have to be shown how each one works.
Oh, it's very interesting. I like that. Yeah, I don't know. I think Berlin's a fascinating place, and I think that it's that case of like sometimes the best preservation of stuff is neglect. Um,
Yeah.
but then on the U.S. side, in terms of like, regional differences in infrastructure that people become proud of, like since the kind of just replacement of everything in American life with driving, like we get weirdly proud of our like quirks in traffic engineering. Like I've had two different Michigan people proudly tell me about the Michigan left, which is this way, it's a highway setup where you have like a divided highway and you have a small street. And this is a system where no one has to take a crazy dangerous left turn. Instead, you make like basically you break it up into two turns.
Yeah. I, as a non-driver, I looked at a diagram. I will never understand this.
I think I'm 40% there to understand. I think you just have to put me in it and I'm sure I'd figure it out. But from the Wikipedia diagram, it's not immediately obvious, I wouldn't say.
Yeah. I don't know if there's that much like culture throughout the US that's regional with driving, but I hear so often people say like, oh, I hate the drivers here, or I love the drivers there. I don't know if there's a difference. I feel like they suck everywhere.
No, yeah. I think it's a little bit sorry. I think it's a little provincial when people say like we have the worst drivers. To me it's just kind of like we have the craziest weather. Like listen, everyone thinks they have that. But I do think that like there will be differences in like driving quality across the country because there's differences in like infrastructure. I think the strodier it gets, the faster the average driver will feel comfortable driving gets. But I don't know, everyone's bad at driving. Like it's a system where like 95% of people have to drive or whatever. Like you're going to get everyone, if that was a smaller population, it would sort a little bit more for just people who like and are confident at driving.
But yeah, on, like highways and stroads, you have this idea that they sort of have replaced regional culture in general.
Yeah, I just think I don't know, as we've kind of like just given more and more space to cars and stuff, it just seems like something to talk about. If British people are famous for talking about the weather as their small talk when they meet people, the American thing is like, oh, how is parking getting over here? How is traffic? And people like are always going to need to kind of talk to fill the room a bit, and just like cars are just our topic, basically. I think that on some level we kind of like the inconvenience they bring us. It gives us something to talk about.
Yeah. I think driving culture has sort of supplanted actual culture in a way, in the sense that like some of the only regionalism I still see beyond like, some people having Southern accents is that people do use different vocabulary for driving, like highway versus freeway versus expressway, or like overpass versus flyover.
Yeah. I was on the New Jersey Turnpike, I think. What the hell's a turnpike?
What is a turnpike?
I don't know, but I was on it. I just put the address into the computer and followed it. Yeah, I was driving through New York, and I think I might have racked up congestion pricing on my sister's car on accident. I thought I put in no tolls on Google Maps, but that means that I've paid towards,
The Second Avenue subway, which is starting
exactly.
construction soon.
Yeah. You're
Very
welcome,
nice.
New York. So I think a really interesting period of like American infrastructure is the Works Progress Administration, which was like a government program put on during the Great Depression by FDR in order to put more Americans to work. The idea was the federal government partnering with state and local governments, and they'd provide some money and some oversight, but the state would meet them in the middle at some point and provide the people, basically.
Yeah. This is something I knew about a little bit, but I didn't know how large it was. It employed 8.5 million people, so it was a massive program.
Yeah, one of the concerns was that it was going to eat into like the already struggling private market for labor, but they always paid below like medium wage. That was their thing. It was like a WPA job was not cushy, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, how high did unemployment get during the Great Depression? It must have been like 30% at least.
Yeah. But yeah, and it's interesting because it's kind of, I've talked about this before, that like cities in America have kind of growth rings. What I mean by that is like, when you cut down a tree, you can see the rings where they had a good summer, and you can see the rings where they had a really punishing winter.
Yeah.
I think that like economic cycles are like that too. So in Chicago, you can see that like a certain type of home is overrepresented because the economy was good in the 1890s and 1910s. Besides that one depression, they had some kind of little panic around then.
Yeah.
And there's tons of building in the 1920s, and then there's not in the 30s, and then there's back again in the 50s. The WPA results in this very interesting growth ring of how while there's not a huge amount of single family homes from that period, there is a lot of public infrastructure of a variety of types. And it's kind of like left its mark across the whole country, for the most part, pretty evenly.
Yeah. They built a ton of different things. Some that I wouldn't expect, like they built over 1,000 ice skating rinks.
Yeah, that must have been nice in this very grim period in America that just like, I might not be able to afford heating in my home, but I can go out and ice skate. I think it's a reflection of like what these individual communities valued and needed. But it was also a reflection of like the federal government itself. Like, to me, I notice a lot of like 1930s post offices across Chicago. I think they're very handsome. I think they're very, yeah.
They did build a lot of, post offices because they were so useful.
Mm-hmm.
They also did a lot of libraries.
Yeah. And in terms of their exact style, like they varied a bit. This was an interesting kind of crossroads. We've talked about interwar modernism before. And in America, there was a lot of like competing styles. In some parts, like Beaux Arts was still very strong. In other places, you're getting the streamlined moderne. I even saw this phrase of depression modern, basically, which is kind of streamlined modern, but out of like just lack of funds.
Out of austerity.
Yeah, out of austerity. And another style you get talked about is stripped classicism. And this is what the Pentagon is stripped classicism. It is like trying to be like Roman and Greek, but things are a little simplified. The corners are a little cut. Like you won't have grand, complete marble columns. Instead, you'll have some brick that's stepped back in a column shape. It's balling on the budget.
Yeah. I like buildings from this time period, but I have not been looking for like specifically buildings built in these years. The only one I'm familiar with is this one that's called like the Hall of Waters, which I learned about through Steve, who we did our episode with on historic preservation.
Oh, yeah.
Because he like just drives around all over the country. Like places like Oklahoma, he's been everywhere there. And so one of the places he went was Excelsior Springs in Missouri, which he lived in St. Louis for a bit. But it has the word springs in its name because it actually is home to many natural springs. So the Works Progress Administration, at one point, they built what's called the Hall of Waters there, which was meant to be a bit of like a spa in a way. But they also had this like water bar. You could sample 10 different types of water.
You would have loved this, Nathan. God, you love fancy waters.
Yeah. But I love it too for its architecture because it's Art Deco, but inspired by like Mayan culture. But it's just this blend of so many things that could never happen today. It's like this government-funded Art Deco, Mayan-inspired hell spa in like Missouri.
Yeah, no, it's just like it's literally like throwing darts at a wall to make an iconic like piece of architecture. No, it's fascinating. It speaks to just like I think it must have been even surprising at the time. I wouldn't be surprised if like the workers on that are like, what are we building? Like, doesn't people know there's a depression going on and we're building a water tasting like palace basically?
Yeah.
But no, yeah, the other side of like architecture in this period is there was a lot of Art Deco in this time, and I think it was I don't know. I've been reading the oral history of Bertrand Goldberg, the architect who did the Marina Towers and stuff. This very forward thinking architect, and one of the things he was really trying to make clear to the interviewer was that a lot of the stuff we associate with post World War II thinking, the kind of like, all right, the old world order has fallen. We are a new and striding. We have to rebuild the way that we do everything. Like we had to kind of have to toss out the book on a lot of things. He says that thinking started in the 30s across the world. It was that he was saying that like the Depression should be given almost as much credit as World War II in terms of breaking down old ways of thinking. And with that, I've really been looking at kind of Art Nouveau and early modernism in a different light, which is that these are people who are saying that like they didn't need the entire world to go at war to learn that the system was broken. They just needed the entire like world's economy to essentially collapse at the same time.
That's interesting. It's sort of like the Black Death, the plague, and the Renaissance in a way.
It's just that the problem is the two events are so close together that we kind of just think about the second one, World War II. But what he's trying to express in this is like a political feeling, and those like get written down, of course, like people write them, but they get rewritten in a sense.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting to see him be so like ardent about that.
Yeah.
And so like the more futuristic buildings that came out of this period, I think, are kind of especially triumphant because they're saying that like in this very dark hour of America, there will be a future. Like this is, he said that there was two ways to think about the Depression. It was either that this is just a low spot in the cycle and we're going to come back, or that everything is fundamentally changed. And I don't think you can see that in architecture exactly, but it's interesting to know that that was happening at the time.
That's so beautifully put.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're so well spoken.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else on the WPA?
Just there's great maps of like stuff in your neighborhood. Like no matter how small your town is, you probably got something during the WPA, even if it is just an infrastructure project, like I don't know, like a paving project or something. But you know, we're going to be coming up on soon. It's 100 years of it, like because it started. You know, I mean, we have some time. But it's just interesting to think about, especially like infrastructure with the bipartisan infrastructure bill became this big topic, this idea of expanding the idea of infrastructure and all of that. Like we just have to think of the WPA, like there's not really been anything like it since.
Yeah. If people in Chicago want to think about the WPA, there is the New Deal archives at Roosevelt University, which doesn't get used much.
Oh.
I once went there to interview an archivist as part of my master's in library science program. And I was the first visitor there in 10 months.
Oh.
Yeah.
They have someone at the desk waiting?
No, just an archivist I emailed who like let me inside and showed me around a bit. Wow. But they had works from the WPA where they did like cultural things too. Like I remember seeing this book of, it was either like folk tales or like folk melodies, but they did cultural projects like that too.
Yeah, I actually should have mentioned that earlier. But yeah, like I guess it's just more relevant for this episode to talk about the built infrastructure. But there was an incredible amount of like playwrights, artists, musicians. There were like concert series basically put on. Murals. Oh my God, if we want to talk about murals, like it seems like as I was looking at the Chicago instances of the WPA, a lot of them, I was thinking of like, oh, it'd be cool to bike around and view these, but so many of them are inside gymnasiums. It feels from that era, or they're in like high schools and stuff. So if you were a muralist in this time, it's great to be alive.
Yeah. I listened to an interview this week where someone was saying that the WPA probably built so many gymnasiums because FDR personally cared about exercise as someone with polio. He liked swimming in order to exercise, and he thought it was important for people to do.
Wow. That's the other thing. I mean, I said at the top of the episode, like the aesthetics of infrastructure are like, they come from the highest level of government. They're filtered through architects, and then they are appreciated by the people. But you forget about like, they can really show someone's will of the president of that time. One of the accusations against the WPA is that they gave more funds and more projects to swing states. So that they could woo them to vote Democrat in the next election. Actually, yeah. So they didn't spend as much in kind of done deal places like the Northeast. Like, they're gonna vote blue anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then one One part I'd kind of like to lightly wade into is like in city infrastructure is like ethnic or culturally inspired infrastructure. I think it's interesting when when cities wade into this and try and add like a certain like related flair to
Yeah.
city works.
I mean, cities are largely liberal. I think if they're going to be willing to add ornamentation, spend extra money on infrastructure, one of the ways they might do that is in order to signal the ethnic makeup of a neighborhood. I think they're willing to do that in that
Yeah.
case. It's a use case for ornamentation.
Mm-hmm.
When I think about this, though, I think about the Argyle Red Line station, which was just redone. They reopened the new one like a month or two ago, completely rebuilt it. Prior to the rebuild, it featured a pagoda on top of it because
Mm-hmm.
Argyle Avenue, there are a ton of Vietnamese restaurants. There are also like Laotian, Cambodian people. But the new one, it is also like sort of Asian inspired, but in a much less overt way.
Yeah.
It's sort of almost abstract, but you still sense it.
Yeah, it's abstracted. Where before the pagoda was perched on top of the station, like now they have an abstracted kind of like broadly Asian pattern on the underside of the train done up in lights, which is really cool. If you think about it, it's more visible and accessible to the actual user of the station. Like, because with the pagoda, I guess, yeah, you stand under it or whatever, but you only appreciate it when you're like, you know, a block away from the station.
Yeah.
So this is a lot more immediate. So that's good. But it also, the abstraction might kind of make a little bit more sense here because the pagoda is very distinctively like Chinese. But Ajong Argyle is like a mix of a lot of different stories. It was like the idea of a Chinese businessman, but it attracted tons of Vietnamese businesses. I'd say that they're the plurality over there. But yeah, as you said, Cambodian. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, when I went to high school, a lot of the Vietnamese kids at my school lived in that area.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that these like very like firm and solid and expensive visual signifiers of the culture of an area, I think it's kind of a modern thing. I think it reflects our idea that neighborhoods should not shift around and move anymore. That like whatever they were at the kind of like in our mind's eye of this neighborhood, they should not be changed. I'm thinking about the Paseo Boricua in Humboldt Park. They have a gigantic metal Puerto Rican flag that like spans across the street. And this is a neighborhood that's gone through tons of ethnic change. But in the past, it was like represented in a different way. So it was in Humboldt Park itself, the actual like greenery park. They have Alexander von Humboldt's statue for the Germans, Leif Erikson for the Scandinavians, and Thaddeus Kosciuszko for the Poles. But that feels a little different than having a gigantic flag straddling a commercial avenue.
Yeah, it's huge. And it doesn't have really any functional purpose as infrastructure. It's more like a sculpture than anything.
I'm very like, I'm sympathetic though to it, like knowing the story of like Puerto Ricans were like displaced out of Gold Coast and Lincoln Park. And so I'm sure they were feeling very like rootless essentially. And nothing feels more rooted than a gigantic metal piece of infrastructure.
Yeah.
But that's so different from like, I heard the story of a Jewish synagogue that was built in South Shore in the 20s. And they just knew that the Jewish population would move again as they had earlier. So they built the synagogue so that you could easily remove all the Jewish elements from it, from the outside of the facade, and you could convert the inside into a movie palace. So they had it like as a like you could pack up and go at any moment, basically. And that's just not how we understand like
neighborhoods today.
No. It's like they are frozen in time, kind of from like the 70s on, I think is when we declare it, basically.
Yeah.
Is what it feels like.
But I think even if the ethnic makeup completely changes, there's still a sense of heritage in the area, as with Andersonville and how they have like homages to Swedish culture. I feel like with my own neighborhood, Avondale, which was Polish for a couple of decades, and there's still a presence of Polish people. But you know, Podlasie Club, that was like a Polish nightclub from the 80s. It's retaining the name. It has the old sign, but now it's like a techno spot for young people. It's completely changed, but it's still paying tribute to its roots.
Yeah, in terms of the paying tribute to its roots, it kind of reminds me strangely of like Jewish quarters across Europe. Like you went to the one in Prague, right?
I walked through it. I didn't spend a lot of time there.
No, I think, I don't know. I hate to say it. I guess I'm the only one who can say it. But like if you've seen one, you've seen a lot of them. Like there's a lot of unique stories and stuff there. But what always kind of throws me back about those is how like they're not populated by Jews inside. And so they use infrastructure. They'll like have below the street sign, they'll have like a street sign in Hebrew. They have that in Vilnius, Lithuania. Vilnius, Lithuania also has a statue of Leonard Cohen because he's a Lithuanian Jew as well, too. But yes, there's all these like, I don't want to say paying lip service, that's so charged, but like you have all these like very expensive visual indicators of what this neighborhood used to be. But if you say like, oh, does it function as that purpose anymore? It's like, oh no, all of them moved to like Israel or the US. So that kind of bums me out. But there's a range in them too. I was reading Rick Steves, love that guy, the travel writer,
Yeah.
and he was saying that the Jewish neighborhood of Kazimierz, which I believe is in Poland
That
somewhere.
doesn't ring a bell for me.
No, but he's contrasting it with Josefov in Prague's, and he says that Kazimierz does not feel like a preserved neighborhood. It feels like it's persisted more through benign neglect more than thoughtful planning, which is what I was talking about earlier. Like it's sometimes the best preservation of things, but it stayed cheap and kind of bad. So there are like cafes and stuff, and there's like a Jewish cafe culture. I don't know. I think it's more interesting that things happen when you don't just like declare a whole area, like a district that it cannot change. Like you haven't even seen what the next idea is.
Yeah. It's good to let things be organic. Any final thoughts on infrastructure aesthetics?
No.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was fun to like kind of, I feel like you and I are always like looking very intently at the city around us. But now I was like actively trying not to look at the buildings. I was like trying to look at the non-buildings, the like stuff in between, the little decisions.
I noticed a like sewer grate. No, what do you call the like
Manhole cover?
manhole cover? Yeah.
It's still a sewer grate though.
Yeah. I feel like the only time I ever think about them is with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to mention on this episode that Japan has very beautiful ornate manhole covers as a bit of like civic pride.
I think they have Pokemon ones in some cities.
Yeah. Like they'll put every, Japanese town has a mascot basically. And so they'll stick that on the manhole cover, but they're beautiful. Yeah, I'm surprised it hasn't taken off in too many American cities. I feel like we talked about the cargo cult urbanism of just like, if we paint our bike lanes the same color as Copenhagen, we're going to achieve the same urbanism.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if we make fun Japanese manhole covers, and we're going to have, cute little shops on every corner.
Well, it's probably because there aren't enough pedestrians to see them and appreciate them.
Yeah,
But-
no, you just drive over them. They go, dun, dun, dun. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing this episode. Next week, you'll be out of town again.
Yes.
So I have to do an episode without you. It's going to be with an artist. I won't tease it further than that.
Oh, all right.
But it's a bit related to infrastructure aesthetics. There are going to be some things that tie in. So stay tuned for that.
All right.
Okay.
See you guys.
Bye, everyone.